Confusion and paranoia in the trial. Someone must have slandered Joseph K. For one morning, without having done anything truly wrong, he was arrested. With these opening lines, the reader of Franz Kafka's The Trial is immediately struck with a sense of indefinable existential unease, a feeling that is only deepened and compounded with each narrative development. Reading The Trial is a visceral experience akin to walking through a dark forest with a rapidly dimming flashlight. The reader perpetually feels just as lost, baffled, and disoriented by the society the novel depicts as its protagonist, and, a strong case could be made, as Kafka himself was by his own creation. Join us today as we attempt to understand unintelligible legal protocol, cryptic bureaucratic hierarchies, and omniscient surveillance systems in Franz Kafka's novel, The Trial. I'm your host, Bob. Now please, sit back and enjoy today's edition of Lit Tips. The circumstances of Joseph K.'s arrest are unclear from the start. On the morning of his 30th birthday, two agents appear and inform K that he is under arrest. The agents refuse to disclose under whose authority they've been sent, or to provide any details regarding exactly what crime K is being apprehended for. K, the chief cashier of a bank, is by all appearances a respectable citizen and has no criminal record. Further complicating matters, the agents do not imprison K, telling him that he may remain free for the time being and to expect further details from an organization known as the Committee of Affairs. Initially, K is led by his landlady to suspect that the crime may have something to do with the affair he has been carrying on with his neighbor, Fraulein Berstner. He visits Fraulein Berstner and confides this to her, but she is just as confused as him and at a loss for advice. Shortly after, another woman moves in with Fraulein Berstner, a move apparently made with the explicit intent of keeping K away from her. A few days later, K is summoned to the courthouse, but is not given a specific time or room at which to appear. He eventually finds the court in an attic. K pleads his innocence and demands to know what crime he is suspected of, which only further infuriates the court assembly. Adding to the confusion, the members of the assembly, despite their insistence that K conform to etiquette, are themselves comically uncouth and unprofessional. They openly read pornographic magazines in front of him, are described as looking like aging tenors, and the presiding judge's own wife attempts to seduce K before being escorted away by a law student who claims that the judge's wife is already his mistress. After his initial visit to the court, K is left only with more questions and is no closer to understanding what he has been charged with. Still, he is allowed to remain free and to go about his life. This proves to be extremely difficult. No matter where he goes, the trial becomes inescapable, and K's circumstances all the more disorienting. One day, without explanation, K finds the two agents who initially arrested him being violently whipped in a storage room at his bank. The flogger informs K that the agents are being punished for soliciting bribes from K as well as for indiscretions cited by K before the court assembly. K emotionally appeals to the flogger to stop, but he refuses. The next day, K finds the agents in the same storage room, still suffering under the whip of the flogger. The court never informs K of his right to an attorney and makes no effort to provide him one. The task falls to K's uncle, who introduces him to an unpleasant, bedridden old lawyer named Herr Old. Old is clearly in no condition to represent anyone, but he agrees to take the case. Taking much greater interest in K is Old's nurse, Lenny, a woman with a webbed hand and an insatiable lust for accused men. She wastes no time seducing K on the spot in Old's office. Afterward, K informs his uncle of the encounter, enraging him and leading him to tell K that he has no respect for the legal process. As he prepares for the case, K takes a suggestion from one of his bank's clients to visit the court's painter, Titorelli. During K's meeting with Titorelli, he becomes further disillusioned by Titorelli's descriptions of the prolonged, drawn-out trials he has seen over the years. K leaves the meeting with still more questions and a few identical landscape paintings Titorelli is eager to get rid of. Given Old's frail condition and the implication that his case could go on indefinitely, K decides to instead represent himself. When he visits Old's office to inform the lawyer that his services are no longer required, he first meets another of Old's clients. The client tells K that the trial has left him bankrupt. Old then arrives to openly mock the client in front of K. In perhaps the novel's most well-known sequence, K takes a client to visit a cathedral in town. While there, he is approached by a prison chaplain who tells him an ancient court parable known by all high court officials, called Before the Law. In the story, a man who has traveled from the country is denied access to the law by an uncompromising gatekeeper. The countryman pleads with the gatekeeper for years on end. The gatekeeper accepts bribes, but still refuses the countryman access. Untold years pass, and as the countryman is about to die, he asks why no one else has come by since he first arrived. The gatekeeper responds, "No one else could ever be admitted here, since this gate was made only for you. I am now going to shut it." Kay and the chaplain discuss the parable's meaning, with the chaplain advising Kay to simply accept his fate. And so Kay's trial drags on. Before he knows it, a full year has already passed and he is no closer to knowing when the formal proceeding will begin or the nature of his crime. Mere days before his 31st birthday, two unfamiliar agents appear at Kay's home and forcefully lead him to the outskirts of town. Arriving at a quarry, the agents unceremoniously execute him with a butcher knife. The novel abruptly ends with Kay crying out that he's been treated like a dog, with Kafka adding a final coda. It was as if the shame of it should outlive him. What are we to make of this bizarre society Kay inhabits? A society in which seemingly any individual can be accused at any time of an ephemeral crime committed at some indistinct point in the past, and to which the accused isn't only denied an explanation, but is openly scorned and derided for daring to ask what wrong they've done. Written between 1914 and 1915, and published posthumously in 1925, the trial has proven to be remarkably prescient in its examination of indefinable modern-day anxieties. It precedes both Brave New World in 1984 by decades, but is arguably more prophetic in its vision of a society in which nobody seems to have any idea what's going on at any given time, while simultaneously being subject to a greater ruling power that appears to be aware of everything. The various arms of the legal system Kay encounters all seem to work independently of one another, while at the same time, serving the will of some greater enigmatic governmental apparatus. As evidenced by the agents punished by the flogger, even those employed directly by this system are subject to brutal punishment at a moment's notice. Documentary filmmaker Adam Curtis has said that, "One of the guiding beliefs of our consuming age is that we are all free and independent individuals. That we can choose to do pretty much what we want, and if we can't, then it's bad. But at the same time, coexisting alongside this, there's a completely different parallel universe where we all seem meekly to do what those in power tell us to do." Kay's not in jail, but he may as well be because of the system's ever-increasing intrusions into his personal and professional lives. The means by which his every move is monitored is an endless source of confusion to Kay himself, but is quietly accepted by nearly everyone he encounters. He has been branded as one of the accused, with his legacy permanently stained as implied in the novel's final line. Questions of guilt and innocence are irrelevant because the crime itself is unknown. All that matters is that Kay must have done something, otherwise he wouldn't be mired in his legal battle. As a member of this society, it is likely that this very same system was invisible to Kay while it was being enacted against others before his arrest. He only becomes aware of its oppressive power when it targets him, and by then it's far too late for him to defend himself. The term Kafkaesque is often thrown around to describe situations and events involving impenetrable, monolithic authorities, as opposed to an Orwellian scenario, which implies an awareness of an oppressive structure that imposes its dominance with impunity and is organized around a tangible leader or group of leaders. A Kafkaesque scenario is a bit more difficult to grasp. There is no big brother archetype in the trial. Certain figures, like the judges for instance, are clearly higher up the totem pole than citizens like Kay, but they are not presented as absolute rulers. If there is any overlord present in the trial, it is the law. The law is a shapeshifter, inconsistent, amorphous, and indiscriminate in who it chooses to persecute. It is not just unlucky citizens like Kay who are susceptible to its slightest whims, but also the agents, the flogger, the judges, and whatever undefined bosses they answer to. As Kafka biographer Frederick R. Carl puts it, what's Kafkaesque is when you enter a surreal world in which all your control patterns, all your plans, the whole way in which you have configured your own behavior begins to fall to pieces. When you find yourself against a force that does not lend itself to the way you perceive the world, you don't give up. You don't lie down and die. What you do is struggle against this with all of your equipment and whatever you have. But of course you don't stand a chance. That's Kafkaesque. We hope that you enjoyed this edition of Lit Tips. As always, hit that like button if you like what we're doing, subscribe for more videos on literature from your favorites to the plain obscure, hit that bell if you want to be notified when videos drop, and leave a comment with your thoughts on this video along with suggestions for any books or authors you would like us to cover in future episodes. Until next time, keep reading.